We all face storms in life. I'm not just talking about wind and waves, but those fierce squalls of anxiety, fear, and doubt that can rage inside us. What if the key to calming your inner storm was demonstrated in a real one 2,000 years ago on the Sea of Galilee? What if the same power that told a raging tempest to be still is available to bring peace to the chaos in your heart right now? Let's explore one of Jesus' most stunning miracles and uncover how he can calm the fiercest storms that you and I face every day. To really get what happened, you have to picture the scene. We're on the shores of a freshwater lake in northern Israel, the Sea of Galilee. It's beautiful, but it has a reputation. Sitting almost 700 feet below sea level, surrounded by hills, its unique geography is the perfect recipe for violent, sudden storms. Cool air can plummet down the mountains and smash into the warm air over the lake, turning a glassy surface into a churning nightmare in just minutes. For the Jewish people of the time, the sea itself often represented chaos and danger. It was a place of deep, primal fear. The story found in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke picks up at the end of a long day. Jesus had been teaching the crowds, and he was drained. He turns to his disciples and says, "Let us go over to the other side." So they leave the crowds and get into a fishing boat. Now it's really important to remember who was in this boat. At least 4 of the disciples were professional fishermen: Peter, Andrew, James, and John. These guys had spent their entire lives on this exact water. They knew its moods and its dangers. A little wind and rain wouldn't have scared them. As they sailed, Jesus, completely human and completely exhausted, falls sound asleep on a cushion in the back of the boat. He's so tired from ministering that even as the sky goes black and the wind starts to howl, he's out cold. And this wasn't just a strong breeze. The Gospels describe a furious squall. The original Greek paints a picture of a violent, swirling tempest descending on them. Waves, maybe 6 to 10 feet high, were crashing over the sides, and the small wooden boat began to fill with water. It was about to sink. This is the moment all their professional experience became useless. The men who knew this sea better than anyone were suddenly gripped with pure terror. Their skills were no match for the raw power of this storm. They were staring death in the face, and they knew it. In their panic, they turn on their sleeping teacher. Their words are a raw mix of desperation and accusation. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Master, we're going to drown." It's such a human cry, the kind of cry that questions if God even sees you, if he even cares when your life is falling apart. They saw the storm, they felt the boat sinking, they looked at a silent Jesus, and their fear soured into accusation. Jesus woke up. He didn't grab a bucket. He didn't start yelling orders. He just stood up and did the unthinkable. He rebuked the wind and then spoke to the raging sea like it was an unruly dog. 3 words: "Peace, be still." In the original language, it's even stronger, like telling a beast to be muzzled. Instantly, the impossible happened. The screaming wind just stopped. The violent, churning waves laid down flat. The Bible says there was a great calm. This wasn't a gradual thing. It was an immediate, supernatural stillness that was almost as frightening as the storm itself. The laws of nature had just been suspended by a command. The sea was now silent, but a new storm was just beginning. This time, inside the disciples, Jesus turned to them, and his question cut through the eerie quiet. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Let's be clear, Jesus wasn't scolding them for being scared of a deadly storm. That fear was perfectly normal. He was getting at something deeper. Their fear of the storm had become greater than their faith in the one who was in the boat with them. You see, there were 2 storms that night: the storm on the sea and the storm of doubt in their hearts. Jesus calmed the first one with a word to prove he had the power to calm the second. The disciples' reaction is the key to this whole story. The Bible says they were filled with great awe, or more literally, they feared a great fear. This wasn't the same panicked, cowardly fear from moments before. This was the trembling reverence you feel when you realize you're in the presence of something truly holy, something divine. The terror of the storm was nothing compared to the overwhelming awe of the man standing right in front of them. They just looked at each other, stunned, and asked the most important question in the Gospels. Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? That question changes everything. The point of the miracle wasn't just to save them from drowning. The storm was a stage. Jesus used the storm to show them who he really was. In the Old Testament, only God had the power to command the seas. The psalmist says that God stilled the roaring of the seas. By doing what only God could do, Jesus was answering their question without saying a word. He was showing them that the creator of the universe was standing in the boat with them. They thought they were following a great teacher. They were just now realizing they were in the presence of God in the flesh. So, what does a 2,000-year-old story have to do with you and me today? First, let's just admit that we all have storms. Your storm might be a scary diagnosis, a lost job, a broken relationship, a battle with depression, or just the crushing uncertainty of the future. These storms are real. They're terrifying, and they make us feel like we're sinking, crying out that same question, God, don't you even care? This story teaches us a hard but crucial lesson. Following Jesus doesn't mean you get a storm-free life. Think about it. The disciples were in that storm because they were obeying Jesus' command to go to the other side. Sometimes storms hit not because we've lost our way, but because we're on the exact path God has for us. God never promised us an easy journey, but he did promise his presence in the storm. The goal isn't to pray for a life without storms, but to build a faith that trusts the one who has authority over every storm. When the disciples focused on the size of the waves, they were filled with fear. When they finally focused on the power of Jesus, they were filled with awe. Where you fix your eyes in your storm will determine your peace. The disciples thought Jesus was silent because he was uncaring. But his sleep wasn't a sign of indifference. It was a sign of his absolute peace and trust. He already knew the outcome. Sometimes, when it feels like Jesus is asleep in your life, when the prayers feel like they're hitting the ceiling and the storm just gets worse, it's not a signal to panic, it's an invitation to trust. It's a test of faith. Can you believe in his goodness even when your circumstances scream the opposite? Trusting him means we still cry out, just like the disciples did. But we can shift from a panicked, "Don't you care?" to a faithful, "Lord, I know you care, so please save me." That's a prayer that holds onto two truths at once: the reality of the struggle and the reality of his power over it. And here is the ultimate hope. The same Jesus who stood in that boat is the one who has conquered the ultimate storm of sin and death through his resurrection. His authority is absolute. He has the power to speak peace, not just over your circumstances, but into the chaos of your soul. That doesn't always mean he'll snap his fingers and make the problem disappear. Sometimes he calms the storm. Other times he lets the storm rage and calms his child. In the end, this story is so much more than just a miracle about weather. It's a powerful revelation of who Jesus is. He isn't a distant God watching from far away. He's the God who gets in the boat with us. He's the one who is completely unfazed by the chaos that terrifies us. He's the one who can speak a single word and bring perfect peace. The disciples' trip across the sea is a picture of our own journey. They started out thinking of Jesus one way, as a teacher, maybe a prophet, and ended with a new, awesome, and slightly terrifying understanding of who he truly was. Every storm in our life is an invitation to answer the same question they did. Who is this? Is he just a historical figure, a good man, or is he the Son of God, the Lord of all creation, who has authority over every wind and every wave in your life? Your answer to that question will determine everything. If this story spoke to you today, I'd encourage you to subscribe for more content that goes deep into the truths of faith. And I'd love for you to share in the comments, what is a storm that Jesus has brought you through? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to keep holding on. Remember, no matter how fierce the storm gets, the commander of the wind and the waves is in the boat with you. God bless.